The most feared lieutenant in Seoul's underworld was on his knees, disarmed in a luxury penthouse. And the person who put him there was the family's 28-year-old nanny. This wasn't a burglary. It was a targeted invasion. And her response wasn't luck. It was the result of a professional training so secret, even the family who hired her never saw it coming. Her name was Amara Oak. To the wealthy Park family of Seoul, she was simply the quiet, professional nanny from London, hired to care for their two young children. But her resume omitted one critical detail: 3 years of elite close protection training. When a violent syndicate lieutenant came through their door, Amara had 60 seconds to decide: maintain her cover or become the protector she was trained to be. Amara Oak's training didn't happen at a police academy or a military base. It happened at a place called Norland College, a 2-hour drive from London, where the world's most exclusive nannies are taught to fight. For 3 years, she learned cybersecurity, defensive driving, and a proprietary form of close-quarters combat designed for one scenario: protecting a child while subduing an adult attacker. Her final exam involved escaping a simulated kidnapping with a 5-year-old in her arms. She passed in under 90 seconds, but when she graduated, she made a choice none of her classmates understood. She took a job with a global placement agency that specialized in discreet, high-net-worth clients. The agency had one rule: never disclose the full extent of your training. To the families, you are a nanny, nothing more. That's how, in early 2024, she arrived at the 47th floor penthouse of the Park family in the Gangnam district of Seoul. The posting was for 6 months. The father, Park Min-jun, was the CFO of a major shipping conglomerate. The mother, Lee Jae-hyun, was a former concert pianist. Their children, 5-year-old Soo-min and 3-year-old June, were bright, energetic, and spoke a fluid mix of Korean and English. To them, Amara was just Miss Amara, who could braid hair, make perfect grilled cheese, and knew every word to the *Frozen* soundtrack. They saw her gentle hands. They never saw her hands when she trained every morning at 5 a.m. in the penthouse gym, running through combat drills on the heavy bag, her strikes silent and precise. For 4 months, the routine was perfect. The children thrived. The parents, while reserved, were respectful. Amara's references from London described her as exceptional but private. The Parks never asked about the 3-inch scar on her forearm, a souvenir from a training exercise gone wrong. They never questioned why a nanny's background check was handled by a Swiss firm with no public website. They saw what they were meant to see: a highly competent, somewhat quiet young woman from England who was wonderful with their children. But in the shadows of Seoul's gleaming towers, a different story was unfolding. Park Min-jun's company was in the final stages of a brutal corporate takeover. The target was a struggling logistics firm, Hanjin Express, which, unbeknownst to the board, was a front for a regional organized crime syndicate based in Mokpo. The syndicate, known as the Jumchinpa, used the firm to move illicit goods. The takeover would expose their entire operation. The syndicate's response was not a corporate counterbid. It was a threat delivered by a man known only as the lieutenant. His real name was Kwon Tae-seok. His reputation was built on 20 years of enforcing the syndicate's will through calculated, ruthless violence. He never left witnesses. He never failed. The first warning was a brick through the Park's country home window. The police filed a report about vandals. The second was a photo of Lee Jae-hyun leaving a yoga studio, taken from 20 meters away, left on Min-jun's car windshield. The message was clear: back out, or your family becomes the cost. Park Min-jun went to the police. They provided a patrol car that circled the block, a gesture that was both reassuring and utterly useless against a professional. He hired a private security consultant who recommended panic rooms and evacuation plans. But they all shared the same blind spot. They were looking for a threat from the outside. No one considered that the real protection was already inside the home, reading bedtime stories. Amara noticed the changes: the second patrol car, the new, hardened look in Min-jun's eyes when he kissed his children goodbye, The way Jae-hyun would jump at unexpected noises. She reviewed the family's security protocol herself, finding 3 flaws in the penthouse's digital lock system within an hour. She reported them to the security consultant, who dismissed her concerns. She was the nanny. What did she know about threat assessment? So she took her own measures. She repositioned furniture to create clear lines of sight and block potential entry points. She began carrying a discreet, legal self-defense tool, a tactical pen, in the pocket of her uniform dress. She drilled the children on a new game called Quiet Mouse, where they had to hide silently in a specific closet until she gave the all-clear whistle. The tension broke on a rainy Thursday in November. Park Min-jun and Lee Jae-hyun were forced to attend a critical, last-minute board dinner across the city. Amara was alone with the children. At 7:45 p.m., the building's power flickered and died. The penthouse was plunged into darkness, save for the glow of Seoul's skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The security system's backup whirred on, but Amara's trained ears caught a different sound beneath the hum. The faint, metallic snick of the service elevator override engaging. Someone had bypassed the building's lockdown. The children in their pajamas looked up from their puzzle, their eyes wide. Amara moved without sound. She swept them up, one in each arm, and had them in the reinforced closet in the nursery within 8 seconds. "Quiet mouse," she whispered, her voice calm. "I'll be right back." She closed the door, hearing the soft click of the internal lock she'd installed herself. She stepped back into the grand living room just as the front door silently swung open. The silhouette that filled the doorway was broad, wearing a dark rain-slicked jacket. He moved with the efficient grace of a predator, Kwon Tae-seok, the lieutenant. He held a compact, silenced pistol in one hand and a zip tie in the other. His mission was simple: take the children, use them as leverage to force Min-jun to sign the dissolution papers for the takeover. He expected a terrified domestic worker. He did not expect the woman standing in the center of the room, her hands loose at her sides, her weight perfectly balanced on the balls of her feet, blocking the hallway to the nursery. For a fraction of a second, they assessed each other in the dim light. He saw a nanny in a gray dress. She saw his stance, the way he held the weapon, the distance to the nearest cover. He raised the pistol not to shoot but to intimidate. "Move," he said in Korean, his voice a low growl. Amara did not move. She calculated. The children were safe for now. The parents were 40 minutes away. The building's security was compromised. There was no backup coming. In that moment, the quiet nanny from London vanished. In her place stood a graduate of the most exclusive protective training on Earth, and she had one objective: stop him from taking another step toward that closet door. The lieutenant's mistake was assuming she would freeze. Amara Oak's first move wasn't toward him, but toward the nearest light source. Her hand shot out, slapping the wall switch, flooding the living room with stark, blinding light. Kwon Tae-seok flinched, his aim wavering for just a half second. It was all she needed. She closed the 7-foot distance in a silent, low sprint, her body a moving target. The gun barked once, a muffled asterisk fut that buried around in the ceiling plaster. Then her left arm was a vice around his gun wrist, forcing it upward, while her right hand drove the hardened steel tip of her tactical pen into the nerve cluster just above his elbow. His hand spasmed. The pistol clattered to the marble floor, skittering under a sofa. He roared, swinging his free arm in a wild, powerful haymaker. Amara ducked beneath it, using his own momentum to pivot behind him, applying a standing armbar that hyperextended his shoulder joint. The sound was a sickening, wet pop. He screamed, this time in genuine agony, dropping to one knee. But he was a 20-year veteran of street fights. Pain was a signal, not a stop sign. With a guttural snarl, he drove backward, slamming her into the floor-to-ceiling window. The glass groaned, vibrating against her spine. The 60-story drop was a silent void behind her. She lost her grip, gasping for air. He scrambled for the gun. Amara saw the children's puzzle abandoned on the rug, the heavy wooden board. She rolled, grabbed it, and as Kwon's fingers closed around the pistol's grip, she brought the board down in a sharp, chopping arc across the back of his hand. Bones crunched. He howled, the gun falling from now useless fingers. This was the opening. She moved with clinical precision. A knee to the solar plexus drove the air from his lungs. As he doubled over, a focused strike to the temple, not enough to kill, just enough to disconnect the lights. Kwon Tisiok, the feared lieutenant of the Jumchin Pa, slumped to the floor, unconscious. Silence except for Amara's ragged breathing and the drumming of rain on the window. The entire confrontation had lasted 22 seconds. She immediately secured him, using the zip ties he'd brought, binding his wrists and ankles. She retrieved his gun, cleared the chamber, and placed it on the high kitchen counter. Only then did she let herself shake, not from fear but from the adrenaline crash. She leaned against the wall, counting to 10, forcing her heart rate down. The children. She hurried to the nursery closet. "All clear, little mice," she whispered, using the cheerful tone she'd practiced. The door opened. Sumin and June rushed out, clinging to her legs. They were quiet, trusting her completely. She ushered them into the master bedroom, the only room with a solid core door and no external windows. "Super hideout," she said, managing a smile. "I need to make a call. You count the stars on the ceiling for me." She locked the door from the outside. She called 911 first, reporting a home invasion and a subdued intruder. Then she called Park Min-jun. His phone went to voicemail. She tried Lee Jae-hyun. On the third ring, a frantic Amara. "The building management said our power is out." "Listen to me," Amara said, her voice calm and absolute, a tone she had never used with them. "The children are safe. They are unharmed. An intruder is in the living room. He is unconscious and restrained. The police are on their way. You need to come home now. Do not speak to anyone. Do not let anyone into your car. Come directly to the penthouse." The silence on the other end was total. Then a choked, "What, how?" "Now, Mrs. Lee, please. I will explain when you arrive." The police and a medical unit arrived in 6 minutes. The first officers through the door found a scene that defied all logic. A massive, injured man lay trussed on the floor of a $50 million penthouse. A slender woman in a nanny's uniform stood calmly between them in a hallway, her hands held open and visible. "The children are secured in the master bedroom," she stated. "The intruder's weapon is on the kitchen counter. I have touched only the grip to move it." Her Korean was fluent, formal, and devoid of emotion. She sounded less like a witness and more like a forensic technician. The investigation that began that night would unravel into 3 parallel threads: the legal, the corporate, and the deeply personal. The first detectives were skeptical. A nanny had taken down a known syndicate enforcer. Their initial theory was that she was an accomplice, that this was an inside job gone wrong. That changed when Kwon Tisiok regained consciousness in the ambulance, and upon learning he'd been subdued by the maid, began cursing with a fury that convinced them of his genuine surprise. It changed again when the building's security hard drive, recovered from a hidden closet, showed the entire fight from 2 angles. The footage was a masterclass in efficiency. There was no rage, no screaming, just a series of calculated, devastating movements. The lead detective, Inspector Kim, played it back 3 times. "This is not self-defense," he murmured to his partner. "This is procedure." Second thread was the corporate thread. Under the glaring lights of an interrogation room, Kwon Tisiok, facing attempted kidnapping, burglary, and assault charges, saw a way to reduce his sentence. He gave up the Jumchin Pa's entire playbook. The takeover was a pretext. The real target was a specific encrypted server in Park Min-jun's home office, containing financial algorithms that could trace the syndicate's international money laundering. The children were leveraged to force him to decrypt it. The syndicate hadn't just wanted to stop the takeover. They wanted to steal the tool that could destroy them. The third thread was inside the penthouse. Park Min-jun and Lee Jae-hyun arrived to a swarm of police. They saw the blood on the marble, the broken puzzle board, the grim-faced officers. And they saw Amara, still in her gray dress, giving a statement with a calm that seemed supernatural. When they were finally allowed to see the children, who were eating cookies with a policewoman, their composure shattered. The hug lasted for 5 full minutes. That night, after the police had left and the children were finally asleep, the 3 adults sat in the shattered living room. Minjun looked at Amara, really looked at her, for the first time. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice hollow. So she told them, not everything but enough. Norland College, the 3-year program, the combat training, the security protocols, the ethos of absolute protection. My agency places people like me with families who have elevated risks but require discretion. Your corporate profile, the takeover, you fit the criteria. My job was to be a nanny unless I needed to be something else. Jae-hyun stared, tears streaking her mascara. You were a bodyguard this whole time. A protector, Amara corrected softly. The children were always my primary mission. I am so sorry for the deception. It was a condition of my placement. Minjun stood and walked to the window looking at the city lights. You saved my family's life. You saved my children. There is no apology necessary. He turned, his face etched with a new, grim understanding. But this is not over, is it? The man you fought, he is just an employee. The people who sent him will not accept this failure. Amara nodded. No, they will not. They will either retreat or they will escalate. For the next 72 hours, a tense paralysis set in. The story was kept out of the media by the police, who cited an ongoing organized crime investigation. The Parks lived in a safe hotel with police details. Amara stayed with them, her role now openly transformed. She reviewed the hotel's security, coordinated with Inspector Kim, and slept in a chair outside the children's room. The trust between her and the Parks was now absolute, but it was a trust forged in trauma, and it was fragile. Then on the 4th day, the pivot. Inspector Kim called Minjun. His tone was urgent. We traced the electronic override used on your building's elevator. It wasn't a generic device. It was a custom tool, the kind used by private military contractors. And we found something else on Kwon's phone, a deleted message. It wasn't just about your server, Mr. Park. The message said, and I quote, "The package is the priority. The nanny is the contingency." Minjun put the phone on speaker. What does that mean? What package? We don't know, Kim admitted. But we think the nanny refers to Miss Oak. They knew about her, or they knew someone like her might be there. This was a probe, a test, and now they know exactly what she can do. Amara felt a cold drip down her spine. Her cover wasn't just blown, it had been part of the enemy's intelligence. The home invasion wasn't the main event. It was the reconnaissance, and she had just given them a full demonstration of her capabilities. The real threat was still out there, and now it was informed. The deleted message changed everything. The invasion wasn't about the children or the server. It was about her. Amara Oak was the contingency. The syndicate had been watching the Parks for months, and their intelligence had flagged the new, overqualified nanny. They sent Kwon Tae-seok not just to kidnap, but to assess the unknown variable. And now they had a full dataset on her capabilities. Inspector Kim's voice was grave over the phone. They know your training, your response time, your techniques. If they come again, they will come prepared specifically for you. The Park's temporary sanctuary in the hotel dissolved into a new kind of fear. It was no longer a vague threat. It was a personalized hunt. Minjun wanted to flee the country immediately, but Amara advised against it. Airports are predictable. If their reach extends to private military contractors, they can intercept us in a transit lounge. We stay mobile, but we stay here, on ground we can control. She took over completely, transforming their suite into a fortress. She had the children sleep in the center bathroom, the only room without exterior sightlines. She disabled the electronic locks, installing old-fashioned deadbolts she bought herself. She swept the rooms for listening devices twice a day. Meanwhile, the digital forensic team dissected Kwon's phone. They uncovered a network of encrypted chat logs, linking the Jumchenpa to a shell corporation in Singapore. That corporation had one publicly listed client, the private security firm that had originally done the threat assessment for Park Min-jun. The firm had advised against panic rooms and recommended the flawed digital locks Amara had found. The revelation was a gut punch. The park's security had been compromised from the very beginning by the people they paid to protect them. Every protocol, every vulnerability had been fed to the enemy. Inspector Kim arrived at the hotel, his face ashen. He asked Amara to step into the hallway away from the family. "We've hit a wall. The prosecutor's office is delaying Kwon's formal indictment, pressure from above, and my captain just told me to stand down the active surveillance on the parks. This goes higher than I thought. I'm sorry." Amara understood. The system designed to protect them was now bending under the weight of the syndicate's influence. They were on their own. That night, Amara made a call she never wanted to make. She contacted her placement agency in London using a secure satellite phone from Minjun's emergency kit. The handler, a man she knew only as Charles, listened without interruption. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Amara, your contract is for asset protection, not engaging in a war with a foreign syndicate. Our mandate does not extend to two children, Charles," she cut in, her voice steel. "A 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. They are the asset, and the threat is active. I am requesting extraction support." Another pause. "The family can afford private extraction. We are not a paramilitary service." "You vetted this placement. You knew the risk profile. You sent me here. Now I am telling you the local infrastructure is compromised. I need an external evac route, or I need actionable intelligence on the primary threat. Which one can you provide?" The line crackled. She could hear him typing. "The Shell Corporation in Singapore. It's a front for a former KUN operative named Victor Chen. He went private a decade ago. He specializes in corporate espionage turned kinetic. If he's involved, this is a precision contract, not a gangland smash and grab. The package they referenced, it might not be a thing. It might be a person, someone with a specific value." A cold knot tightened in Amara's stomach. "One of the children. Or the mother, or you. I'll send you his profile. But Amara, if Chen is running this, he doesn't fail. He'll have a secondary team already in place. You need to move. Now." She ended the call and immediately woke the family. "We're leaving. 5 minutes. Essentials only." There was no panic, only a terrifying efficiency that had taken hold of them all. They left the hotel at 3 a.m. in the family's least conspicuous car, a black sedan, driven by Amara. She took a circuitous route, her eyes constantly checking the mirrors. They drove for 2 hours, ending up at a remote cash-only Minbak a family guest house in the countryside near Gapyeong, owned by an elderly cousin of Lee Jae-hyun's mother. It was a world away from Gangnam, a wooden house by a river, no cameras, no digital check-in. For 3 days it seemed to work. The children played by the river. The adults existed in a state of exhausted vigilance. Amara used the time to study Victor Chen's file. He was a ghost, a strategist who used local assets like the Jumchenpa for muscle while his own team handled the complex acquisitions. His signature was leaving no signature, but Charles was right. He never missed. If he was still on contract, he was already recalibrating. The break came from an unexpected source, Kwon Tae-seok from his hospital prison bed. Fearing Victor Chen would silence him, he offered a trade to Inspector Kim, full immunity for everything. He gave up the location of a safe house used by Chen's secondary team, a luxury apartment in Hanamdong. He gave up the timeline. The primary op had 2 phases. First, acquire the package, which he now confirmed was the encrypted server, a physical drive disguised as a common external hard drive in Park Min-jun's study. Second, eliminate the nanny, who was deemed an unacceptable variable. The failed first attempt had simply moved the schedule up. Armed with a warrant, Inspector Kim's loyal team raided the Hanamdong apartment. It was clean but not perfectly. In a hidden compartment in a desk, they found a second phone, and on that phone they found photos, not of the parks, of Amara, pictures from London from her time at Norland, a picture of her with her mother outside their flat in Peckham, and a current picture taken 2 days ago of her buying groceries at a market in Gapyeong. The timestamp was 18 hours old. They had been found. Kim called Amara, his voice urgent. "They're coming. You have maybe a few hours. My team is 40 minutes out. Can you hold?" Amara looked at the wooden house, the single road in, the vast forest behind it. It was indefensible. "We can't stay. We're moving into the woods. Send coordinates for extraction." She gathered the family. "They're here. We're going to the tree line. We have to run and we have to be silent." Little June began to cry. Sumin bit her lip, trembling. Amara knelt, looking them both in the eye. "Remember, quiet mouse. This is the outdoor version. We are going to be the quietest mice in the whole forest. Can you do that for me?" They nodded, their small faces pale but determined. They had just disappeared into the thick pine forest when two black SUVs rolled silently down the gravel road. 6 men, dressed in tactical gear but without insignia, emerged. They moved with a synchronized professionalism that made Kwon's crew look like amateurs. Victor Chen's team. They cleared the guest house in under a minute, finding it empty but still warm. The team leader, a man with a scar across his chin, examined the footprints in the soft earth leading into the woods. He gave a hand signal. The team regrouped and began to follow, fanning out in a search pattern. Amara, leading the parks deeper into the forest, heard the distant snap of a twig. They were being pursued. She found a shallow ravine thick with undergrowth. "In here, don't move, don't make a sound." She helped the family hide, covering them with leaves and branches. Then she did something that broke every rule of protection. She separated from her assets. She moved 50 yards away, climbed a small rocky outcrop, and waited. She had to draw the threat away. She saw a flicker of movement, one of the hunters advancing cautiously. She picked up a stone and threw it in a high arc, letting it crash through the canopy 30 yards to the east. The hunter's head snapped toward the sound. He signaled to his partner. They moved toward the noise. Amara counted 4. 2 were unaccounted for. She was about to move when a hand clamped over her mouth from behind and the cold barrel of a pistol pressed into her ribs. A voice, accented, calm, whispered in her ear. "Hello, Norland. You are very good, but we have thermal imaging. The children are in the ravine. It's over." Amara's mind went white and clear. This was the pivot. This was the moment the narrative she had been living, the protector, the guardian, shattered. She was not just a defender now. She was prey who had to become a predator. The man with the gun made his second mistake. He relaxed his grip slightly, confident in his control. He was going to call his team. In that fractional second, Amara dropped her full weight, twisting her head to sink her teeth into the fleshy part of his hand. He grunted in shock, his grip loosening. She drove her elbow backward into his diaphragm, spun, and grabbed the wrist of his gun hand, forcing it upward as she head-butted him square in the nose. She felt cartilage break. The gun went off, a deafening roar in the silent forest, the shot going harmlessly into the air. The other hunters would be on her in seconds. She wrenched the pistol from the stunned man's hand and without a moment's hesitation fired 2 rounds into his chest. He dropped. She didn't pause to feel the horror. She stripped him of his comms unit and a spare magazine, then melted back into the trees, circling desperately to get between the approaching team and the ravine where the parks were hidden. She had just killed a man. The line was crossed. There was no going back. And as she moved, a single thought crystallized. She could not protect them by hiding. She had to eliminate every single threat. The hunter had become the hunted, and the forest, now echoing with the shouts of the remaining team, was her killing ground. The gunshot echoed through the pines, a declaration of war. Amara had one advantage, the hunter's comms unit in her ear. She heard the tense, angry voices of the remaining team. "Echo is down. I say again, Echo is down. The asset is armed and hostile." They were converging on her last position. She had to move them away from the ravine. She keyed the mic, her voice a low, panicked whisper imitating the man she'd just killed. "Contact, West Ridge. She's heading for the road." She fired 2 more rounds into the air to sell the lie, then sprinted north, crashing through the underbrush, making as much noise as possible. It worked. The comms crackled with orders to regroup and pursue. She led them on a brutal chase through the steep terrain for 12 minutes, using every evasion tactic she'd ever learned. Then she stopped running. She chose her ground, a narrow game trail bordered by thick ancient firs. She waited, her breathing controlled, the stolen pistol steady in her hands. The first hunter appeared, moving fast. She fired. A single round to the leg. He went down, screaming. The second returned fire blindly, shredding bark from the trees around her. She flanked him, emerging from the mist like a ghost, disarming him with a brutal kick before he could turn. A strike to the temple rendered him unconscious. Two left. She found them together, covering the approach to the ravine. They had thermal scanners. They knew the family was close. They were setting up a perimeter, preparing to flush them out. Amara had no clean shot, so she used the forest itself. She scaled a tree with silent, simian grace, moving along a thick limb that overhung the trail. As the men passed beneath her, she dropped, landing on the back of the first, driving him face first into the rocky soil. The second spun, raising his rifle, but Amara was already rolling, coming up with her pistol aimed at center mass. "Drop it," she commanded, her voice leaving no room for debate. He hesitated, his eyes calculating. Behind him, the first man groaned, trying to rise. Amara shifted her aim and fired a warning shot into the ground an inch from his head. "The next one ends this. Your contract is over." The standing hunter slowly lowered his rifle. It was over. The forest fell silent again, save for the moans of the wounded. Amara secured them all, using their own zip ties and gear. Only then did she allow herself to feel the tremors in her hands, the metallic taste of adrenaline and terror in her mouth. She had killed a man. She had wounded others. The line was not just crossed, it was erased. She vomited quietly behind a tree, wiped her mouth, and then went to the ravine. "It's me," she called softly. "It's Amara. You can come out." The parks emerged, pale and shaking, leaves in their hair. They saw the bound men, the blood on Amara's clothes. They didn't ask questions. They just clung to each other. Minutes later, the wail of sirens cut through the mountain air. Inspector Kim's team, followed by a SWAT unit, flooded into the clearing. The scene they found looked like a special forces ambush. One dead, three incapacitated, all by one woman. Kim looked at Amara, who stood protectively in front of the huddled family, and gave a single, grave nod of respect. The aftermath was a whirlwind of jurisdictions and hard truths. The dead man was identified as a former French Foreign Legion operative. The captured team sang like birds, offering evidence against Victor Chen and the Jumchen Pa in exchange for deals. Chen himself was intercepted trying to board a yacht in Busan 2 days later. The encrypted server was retrieved from a safety deposit box. It contained not just financial algorithms, but names, dates, and routes linking the syndicate to officials in 3 government ministries. The scandal that erupted would topple a deputy minister and 2 senior prosecutors. But for Amara, the most immediate battle was legal. South Korea's self-defense laws are famously narrow. A killing, even in defense of others, requires exhaustive proof of immediacy and proportionality. The prosecutor initially assigned to the case, one of those under syndicate influence, pushed for manslaughter charges. The narrative was set. A violent foreign nanny, a trained killer, had overreacted. Park Min-jun spent a fortune on a legal dream team. Inspector Kim testified, presenting the thermal imaging data that showed the hunters closing in on the children's location. The security footage from the penthouse was replayed in court, showing Kwon Tae-seok's ruthless entry. The children's psychological evaluations, detailing their terror, were entered into evidence. The turning point came from an unlikely ally, the Norland College principal, Dr. Janet Rose, who flew to Seoul to testify. In a packed courtroom, she explained the college's ethos. "We do not train bodyguards, we train protectors. The sole purpose of our defensive curriculum is to preserve life, specifically the lives of children in one's care. Every action Amara took was a last resort, taken only when the threat to those children was immediate and inescapable. She didn't choose to fight. She chose to save." The case became a national conversation. Was she a hero or a criminal? Public opinion, fueled by leaked details of the syndicate's cruelty and the park's testimonies, swung overwhelmingly in her favor. Petitions were signed. The pressure mounted. Finally, the prosecutor's office, newly purged of corrupt officials, dropped all charges. The ruling cited Article 21 of the Criminal Act. Her actions were a necessary defense of the lives of others. She was free. But freedom came with change. Amara could not return to being just the nanny. The trust was there, deeper than ever, but the dynamic had shifted forever. One evening, a month after the trial ended, Park Min-jun asked to speak with her. The children were asleep. The penthouse, now fitted with a state-of-the-art security system she had designed, was quiet. "I have spoken with your agency," he began. "We have terminated the contract." He saw the flicker in her eyes and raised a hand. "Not because we don't want you, because the arrangement is wrong. You are not a service to be contracted. You are family." He slid a document across the table. It was an offer of permanent, formal employment as the director of family security for the Park household, with a salary that reflected the title, full residency sponsorship, and an equity stake in his company's new security division. "You will answer only to me and Jae-hyun. Your primary duty, if you accept, remains Soo-min and June. But we want you to build something. A legitimate firm that does what you do, protect the vulnerable from the shadows." Amara was silent for a long time. She looked out at the Han River, the same view she'd seen on her first day, when she was just a woman with a secret. "I killed a man," she said quietly. "And you saved 4 lives," Min-jun replied. "Including my own. I was a man who saw security as a transaction. You taught me it is a covenant. Please stay." She accepted. The final surprising detail emerged a week later. Inspector Kim, while closing the files on the Juncheonpa, found a buried financial trail. A small, anonymous payment had been made to Victor Chen's Shell Corporation 6 months earlier. It originated from a rival conglomerate, one that had lost a major bid to Park Min-jun's company the previous year. The corporate takeover was the trigger, but the rival's covert funding was the spark. They hadn't wanted the server. They wanted Park Min-jun broken, his family shattered, his company destabilized. The syndicate was just the weapon. This meant the true enemy was not the mob, but the boardroom. Min-jun, armed with this information, didn't go to the police. He took it to the board of the rival company. The resulting silent, brutal corporate coup removed the responsible executives and resulted in a lucrative merger that made Min-jun's company stronger than ever. The war ended not with bullets, but with leveraged buyouts and non-disclosure agreements. Life found a new rhythm. Amara still braided Soo-min's hair. She still made grilled cheese for June. But now she also designed security protocols for other high-risk families. She hired and trained a small, discreet team, many of them Norland graduates. On Tuesday nights, she taught a self-defense class for the children of diplomats in a studio in Gangnam. The Park's penthouse was no longer a gilded cage, but a home with an invisible, formidable guardian woven into its very fabric. One Tuesday evening a year later, Amara was in the kitchen making jollof rice, the scent of Scotch bonnets and thyme filling the air. Park Min-jun walked in, loosening his tie. He didn't speak, just picked up a spoon and tasted the rice directly from the pot. Amara raised an eyebrow. "You never learn." "Some habits are worth keeping," he said, a faint, real smile touching his lips. From down the hall, the sound of the children laughing echoed, followed by Jae-hyun's voice calling them for bath time. The sound of a normal life, protected not by walls but by a promise made in a dark forest. Amara Oak had come to Seoul with a suitcase and a secret. She had fought a war she never asked for on 2 fronts, in a luxury penthouse and in a misty pine forest. She had crossed lines and faced down the consequences. And in the end, she had done exactly what her training was meant for. She had given a family their future back. The story of Amara Oak asks an uncomfortable question. What is the true cost of safety? We live in a world of visible threats and invisible protectors. We see the gated communities, the security details, the encrypted phones. We rarely see the human calculus happening in the quiet moments before chaos arrives. Amara's training at Norland College wasn't just about combat. It was about a singular, burdensome truth. that to truly protect the innocent, you must be willing to become what the threat fears most. You must be willing to cross the line they believe you cannot, and then live with the shadow of that choice forever. Her journey from a quiet nanny to a director of security isn't a story of transformation, but of revelation. The capability was always there, woven into the braids she fashioned and the meals she cooked. The crisis didn't create her strength, it simply demanded its application. This is the paradox of the protector. They must live in the peaceful world while being forever shaped by the violent one, their true value measured only in the disasters that never happen. The park's story ended not with a dramatic showdown, but with a quiet kitchen and the smell of jollof rice. The most powerful result of Amara's intervention wasn't the collapse of a syndicate or the corporate merger. It was the sound of children's laughter echoing safely down a hallway. It was the restoration of ordinary life. This is the ultimate goal of all protection, whether from a criminal lieutenant or a corporate raider, to create a space where love and normalcy can grow unafraid. So the next time you see a nanny in a park, a chauffeur waiting patiently, a housekeeper leaving at the end of the day, consider the unseen layers. Consider the stories they carry, the skills they may hold in reserve, the silent vows they might have made. The world is full of ordinary people tasked with extraordinary responsibilities, their heroism hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the mask must come off and the protector must step forward. Their stories are the quiet pulse beneath the noise of our world, and understanding them changes how we see safety, sacrifice, and the often invisible lines between a job, a calling, and a covenant. If you found this journey into the shadows compelling, there are more stories of hidden resilience and quiet strength waiting for you. Subscribe now and never miss a deep dive into the real lives that inspire the headlines. Thanks for watching.